This is our topic for today, as you also probably on Facebook or as you are emailed or texted. So we are looking at the situation we find ourselves in today, where we are in the middle of Corona, staying at home, trying to figure out how can we keep our businesses afloat, finding ourselves in a situation where we have to make decisions that may have consequences, such as, do we fire employees? What do you do to conserve cash in this time? And so we thought it would be wise to share some of the tips that we have to help you in this time to make decisions that will help you as a person as well as help your business. So looking at what you're going to cover today, this is going to be about a 1 hour session, max about 1.5 hours. And so we'll get an introduction to Sinapis. For those of you who are not familiar with who are the people bringing this workshop to you, we'll take you through a couple of slides to help you to understand who Sinapis are. And then we're going to get into the real nitty-gritty details of what are the things we need to be really looking at in this season to help us to stay afloat, to help us to really continue with business and survive beyond the Corona season. And after that, we're going to have an interactive Q&A session. So this is where I'm going to take your questions. We're going to answer them and help you more or less figure out what to do. And then we'll have a summary and conclusion. And hopefully you'll be able to have learned something that will help you get some ideas on how you can stay afloat in this time. So without further delay, I'll just take us quickly through who we are as Sinapis. So Sinapis is an organization that deals with training entrepreneurs. We've been doing this for about 10 years now, since the year 2009. And our mission is to make disciples and elevate poverty through the power of entrepreneurship. We are a faith-based organization, Christian, and so the reason we say we want to do this is because we want to see a crop of ethical leaders who are not practicing ungodly business practices like corruption spring up in this market. We know that issues of corruption and other things are such a big challenge in the business sphere in Kenya. And so what we want to do is to help people to understand how can they run businesses that without having to engage in such practices and still succeed. And that remains the heart of why we exist. Our vision is to empower 10,000 entrepreneurs globally and take back the marketplace for the glory of the kingdom. What we mean by that is basically have a crop of people who can say they succeeded without having to cut corners, maintained quality, and they still ran successful businesses. So looking at our current programs, we have two main programs that we run. The first one is the Academy, and so this was launched in 2011, so about going to 10 years now. And so what this program is a 4-month program. We call it a mini MBA just because of how intensive it is, the content that we provide. And what is really interesting about the program is that it's very practical. So it's not just your typical theoretical information you learn in school. This is about information that you get, you can apply in your business the next day. And so this is designed for people who already have existing businesses and they are struggling with the challenges of, the main challenges people face when they're growing their businesses. It's also infused with Christian principles to help people to understand how they can apply their faith in their business, how they can run businesses that actually glorify God. And so looking at some of the things we've been able to do since we launched, we've trained over 3,000 entrepreneurs since. Of this, these entrepreneurs have created over 2,000 new jobs for their employees. And out of this, we also see 72% have refused to accept or pay bribes because of what they've learned at Sinapis. While we'd love to see this number at 100%, it's a good step as we try and change the landscape of Kenya. We also have another program called Aspire, and this was when we realized that there are also people who want to start businesses and they're not extremely sure how to. So the purpose of Aspire, which is a 9-week program, is basically to help people to refine their ideas, to test them and to see if they're viable without the expense of investing so much into a business that's failing. I'm sure all of us have been in a situation where we've put so much money behind a business that doesn't succeed. So the idea behind Aspire is how can we make sure that by the time you're investing money into a certain business, you know that it's going to more or less succeed. Looking at our collective impact that Sinapis, not us, but our graduates have achieved, they've raised over 20 million in capital, revenues of over 20 million. The growth year after year is 78%. 67% are still in business after graduating. If you're aware, I believe the the national rate of businesses that survive beyond 3 years is probably about now 40%. So there's something that they learn that helps them to move beyond that number. And we are not just about finances, even the social impact. We care about joblessness, and the right people to solve this problem of joblessness, unemployment in our country is people like yourselves who have joined us for this call. And so the impact you've seen is creation of new jobs over 2,000, and the people impacted in terms of if each person who is employed supports another 5 people, like their family, those are impacts of over 20,000 people. And so this is what we want to see grow. This is why we as Sinapis are invested in entrepreneurs, in business people, in training, to be able to see a greater impact in the sphere of more job creation, more kingdom businesses coming on, and people who are running businesses that succeed. And so without further ado, I will go into our main topic for today, as you know, which is open for business, remaining afloat in an economic downturn. So what I'd like to say at this point in time, for those of you who are just joining us, because of the internet challenges that may be there for different people, if we have questions, we're live on Facebook and on Zoom as well. So you can write down your questions as you go along on the chat function of Zoom. So once there, my colleague Joe, who is also on this call, is going to compile these questions. And so when we get to the Q&A session, we will start by your questions to make sure that anything you've not understood, anything that's not so clear, anything you'd like further help on, we are able to assist you in that. All right, so now let's talk about, being afloat. And one of the words that will consistently come up when you're thinking about how am I going to succeed in my business at all times in this Corona time. So I think this thing came when Corona started. It started out almost like a joke, like we are not even sure if this thing is real. But now we are seeing the impact on our lives, on businesses, and the idea is, okay, I have this business and I want it to survive. I know there's potential in it, but the way things are going, ni kubaya. So the question is, how do we make sure that then we manage our cash flow? Because if you're going to stay afloat, it's about how wisely you use the money that you have. And we're going to talk about that in detail for the next 30 or so minutes. And so when you're managing cash flow, as you can see on the slides, there are 3 things you want to do in this time. Remember, this is not an ordinary time. Yeah, the newspapers are saying things like we're living in unprecedented times. It's not a normal time. So right now, it's not really, the focus is not so much on growth, but the focus is on preserving our businesses, that they may reach that point where we want to grow, so that we don't have our businesses crash and fall. And so the first thing you want to do is to be able to meet your most critical obligations. So this could be things like paying your utilities, things like rent, employees. So that's one of the things you want to do when you're in a cash flow crunch. That is number 1 priority. How am I going to meet my everyday needs that I need to be able to keep this business afloat? The second thing is, how do you ensure the business continues to operate without minimal negative impact? In other words, how do you make sure that that what you're doing is you're not going to have a situation where your bills are higher than the income that's coming in. That's what we mean by the negative impact. The other thing is, how long will I be able to survive in this cash crunch? So you want to be able to be sure that your purpose is to survive. At this point in time, you're talking about survival. Like, how can we make sure that we come out of this alive with our businesses still in place? In case you're wondering, we'll be able to share the slides with you. So don't take too much attention into writing notes, right? If you can make some notes for yourself, but if that's going to distract you from getting the message, don't worry, we'll be able to share these notes with you after. All right. So the next thing we are going to look at is the 4 main areas we're going to focus on when it comes to cash flow management. And so these areas are working capital, operations, debt, and liquidation. So we are going to start by looking at working capital. All these things are necessary for us to manage our cash, because if you think about it, these are the main areas where we can either get money or this is where we spend money in our businesses. So the first area we're going to look at is working capital. I'm sure this is a word most of us have used before, probably even today you use this word, maybe you're saying I'm running out of working capital. Yeah, it's a word we know, but when you look at it, what does this really mean, right? So looking at it from like a, a very technical perspective, it's a measure of the company's efficiency and its short-term financial health. So what that means is, in other words, what does this mean? So when I talk about working capital, we are talking about liquidity. In other words, do we have the money we need to be able to run our day-to-day operations? Yeah. So are we able to meet our current needs? Like, think about it. If it's what do you need to? You need to buy supplies. You need to pay people, your suppliers, the employees. So when you're talking about working capital, it's that liquidity that you have more financially, like from an accounting background. This would be your current assets minus your current liabilities. Now, money that is tied up in inventory or that customers still owe cannot be used to pay off obligations. In other words, you can't say I have money because there's somebody who owes you money. They are not able to pay you there and then, therefore you're not able to meet your obligation there and then. So this is about liquidity. Now, when you're talking about working capital, it's not an abstract concept. So there's things we talk about. The first thing is accounts receivable. The second thing we talk about is accounts payable. And the third thing we talk about is inventory, right? So looking at accounts receivable, what do we mean by accounts receivable? We know what this is, but just to be clear, when we are talking about accounts receivable, we are talking about money that is owed to us. So maybe you're a printer. You printed for someone their photographs, you printed for someone their books, and they are yet to pay you. So the money that they owe you is then called accounts receivable. Now, looking at the times we're living in this Corona era, if I can call it that, the first thing you want to do to preserve cash is to collect what's out there. Sometimes maybe we are, we know money is coming in either way, so we are relaxed, but this is not a season where you're going to relax and be slow in collecting money. So the first thing you want to do is to collect money from those who owe you, your debtors, faster. So this is definitely necessary, because if you are struggling, for example, to pay your employees or your rent, you want to be able to see, where can I get immediate cash from? Before you reach the place of saying I need a loan, let's see, what can I actually collect? One of the things I think we are usually afraid of is with our clients, we don't want to upset them, we don't want to nag them. So maybe we are not very sure how we should collect this. But the best thing, because at the end of the day, people are human. Now more than ever, people understand the situations and the times we're living in. So the best thing to do is to reach out. Actually, just reach out to your clients. It's a phone call. A phone call is much more, versus an email. You can do an email for formality, but when you call someone, they feel that need, they feel that connection, and they feel like, anyway, this person is saying something that makes sense. And as it's money that's rightfully due to you, you've performed a service, you need to be paid. There's nothing wrong with calling to ask for your money. Again, remember, you need to be polite. It's not like, wewe nipatie pesa yangu. You have to be polite as well. So what you can do as well, sometimes the debt may be so big, your clients are surprised. They don't really know how to go about it. Start asking, come up with a payment plan with your debtors. So even if it's partial invoice, if say someone owes you 100,000 and they don't have that 100,000 with them, can they start by paying you 10,000 this week, next week, like that? Come up with a plan that makes them feel like, okay, this debt is doable. I don't have to keep running away from my debtor, and be very diligent in following up. Yeah? Remember, it's people remember the person is always in their face. That's how it is. You must remain top of mind. Remember, if this person owes you money, there's a high chance you're not the only person that they owe money. They owe money to a number of people. And if this is the case, then you want to make sure that out of all these people they owe money, they're thinking about you as number one. So you have to be very diligent in following up, like keeping on, reminding them, getting in touch, because even you think about your own debts. When you have your own debts, the person who doesn't really follow up with you, that's usually will be like, that's one I'll pay number last because yes, sumbua. But now remember, it's the same way with them. So try and make sure you're top of mind. Just to make sure that we actually implement these things, I want us to take 2 minutes, and this is a reflection exercise I want us to do. So for the next 2 minutes, I want you to write down all the clients that owe you money. Definitely, if you're in business, there are people who owe you money. If not, congratulations, you're very efficient at collecting debt. But what I want you to do is just come up, who are all these people that owe you money? If you're not able to do it within the 2-3 minutes, there's something else I would like you to take out of this. Come up with a plan of how you're going to consistently and professionally reach out to them. By professionally, I mean, don't get to the point where you're nagging, always calling, etc., but at least in a way that helps someone to remember that this is urgent for you, right? Again, you don't want to nag somebody so much that they're like, I'll never do business with Sylvia because the last time I did business with her, she was hounding me for money. Yeah, so find a way of, you have to reach that point, that delicate balance of professionalism, but at the same time persistence. And then find out, and then also give yourself a target of what you want to collect and by when. So I'll just give you a few minutes to do this. So I'll be silent for about 2 minutes as you write this down. All right. I'll assume you're done. And if you're not, don't worry. You can still take some time to do this. So, right, you have that list of people who owe you money. Now you can just try and put that into timelines. When do you want to collect? How will you reach out to them? How often are you going to do it? Are you going to email and then text and then call? What's the strategy you're going to employ? Now, the next element of working capital is accounts payable. Now, this is the exact opposite of what accounts receivable is. When we're talking about accounts payable, we're talking about now this is the money that you owe, people around you. So it could be your employees, it could be the government through taxes, it could be your suppliers, whoever you owe money, right? So that is your accounts payable, the money that you owe. So now that you've tried to collect your sales and you're thinking of how am I going to collect the money that's out there, it's time to negotiate with the people who owe you money. At the end of the day, cash flow is a balance of making sure you're collecting money faster than you're taking it out. If you're taking it out faster than you're collecting it, it means you'll be left with a negative. But if you're collecting it faster than you're paying it out, then that means you're going to be saving money. So the trick is to make sure that you delay, or rather you find strategies of making sure that you're not going to be paying immediately. You incur a debt while people take forever to pay you back. But we'll get into that a little bit more later. So now what you need to do, one of the strategies we'd encourage you to employ when you're thinking about the people you owe money is to negotiate, prioritize and negotiate. So when you're talking about prioritization, sometimes we think, let me pay the small debts and then I pay the big debts later. But really the people who can actually like take you to court, someone won't take you to court unlikely for 1,000 shillings, 10,000 shillings. But once you start getting into the hundreds of thousands, it can get pretty serious pretty fast. So the idea is to prioritize who are the people you owe most money to, right? Now that you've done that, there's something I think as human beings we have this tendency that whenever we owe somebody money, we do a disappearing act. That is the time to change your line. That is the time to never respond to emails. Why? Because you're afraid of telling people, Rosapi, I don't have that money. But what I would encourage you now more than ever, you need to be proactive and you need to reach out. When someone who has your money is coming to you and telling you, hey, Sylvia, to be honest, things are tough right now, but this is the plan I'm going to give you. Please be patient with me. When you're talking to them, they say this person is not running away from my debt. So that means they're less likely to panic. Secondly, it makes you come across as trustworthy because you're answering their calls, you're responding to their emails, you're actually reaching out to them before they reach to you, threatening you with court action, for instance. So looking at the amounts that you owe, if you are not in any form of debt or you don't owe anyone money, good for you. But chances are, if you're in business, you're always operating with some form of payables. So this could be to your suppliers, those who are giving you supplies that help you to convert your product into a finished product. It could be employees, because you need to pay them salaries at the end of the month, if they're paid, if they're like full-time employees. It could even be the government in terms of taxes. So start with by prioritizing. I think now, like I've mentioned before, this is a good time, because usually when you're in your business and you have your own challenges, they are unique to you. People wouldn't really understand your situation. But if you look at the situation we're in, coronavirus has not just affected your business. It has affected people in Kenya, people in East Africa, people in Africa, and people in the world. So when you come to someone and say, look, this thing has had this effect on my business, therefore the plan I had before of paying you back, I may not be able to do it now. What do you think about if I can pay you in this way? So in other words, you're trying to negotiate with them. And I would say also keep up with what the government of Kenya is announcing. This is, even like, for example, I'll talk about debt in a few, but even like, I think, you've seen that, for example, people like ECB in partnership with M-Pesa have put up some money, if I'm not wrong, about 30 billion shillings to help people in, who have loans. They're extending the loan periods if you already have an existing loan, and they're also increasing the amounts you can borrow. So try and keep up with what are the things that are now available to me, to be able to make sure that I'm able to keep up with my payables, for instance. You could also look out for opportunities, the organizations that are putting together opportunities for soft working capital or grants to be able to help people in business at this point in time. So keep an eye open as we are don't just stay at home and do nothing, right? As in, look out for these opportunities. Who is trying to support entrepreneurs? Who is offering one thing or another? So that you make sure that you're able to try and maximize on the opportunities that are available for you to stretch your business further as we try and survive this corona cash crunch. Now, what I want us to do is similar to what we did with accounts receivable. I want us to take 2 to 3 minutes and write down all the people that your business owes money. And within this time, if you have time, that's fine. If you don't, you can now prioritize them. Remember, we talked about prioritizing them. And then also think about how you're going to contact them. This is the time to pick up the phone and just call them. Don't run away from them. That makes people even more distrusting of you. And then think about, if I go to this person and I tell them, I'm not able to pay this debt, but this is how I'm going to do it. Think about what negotiated terms can you actually meet. So don't give or don't overpromise. It's always better to underpromise and overdeliver than to do the reverse. So take 2 to 3 minutes to do this. All right, I think we have finished, or at least you've made some progress now. So I want us to move to the last element of working capital. Remember, just to take you where we are, if you're talking about remaining afloat, what you're talking about is managing our cash flows. And the first element of managing cash flows, we talked about working capital, the money you need, the actual cash money, liquid money that you need to be able to meet your daily needs in your business. We've talked about accounts receivable, what is owed to you, accounts payable, what you owe, and now your inventory. So when we are talking about inventory, as you can see, we are talking about an asset that's waiting to be converted into cash. For example, if I have a clothes boutique, this could be the clothes that are in my, these are the clothes that are in my shop. If I have a bakery, maybe I have some cupcakes on this.
Hi everyone, my name is Joseph. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, Sylvia will just,
Yes.
the laptop has a bit of an issue, but she's getting back now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as we can work on the things. Just please, if you have any question, just send it on the chat. Yeah, I've compiled. Kindly let's be on mute if you're not contributing. Thank you. So if you have any question, kindly just share it on the chat. We are compiling everything as we think through what we are the presentation. Thank you. So I can see several questions coming in. One from Emma. Emma asks, how do you negotiate with KRA considering their slow response time? That's thank you for that question. We'll try and answer it in the Q&A. Then from Isaac, is the landlord among us the people we could negotiate with? Any ideas on how to successfully negotiate? Wow, what an interesting question. Yeah, so Sylvia is just getting back. Yeah, she's there. Back to you, Sylvia.
I'm so sorry, guys. My internet just dropped kabloom on me like that. But please bear with us. I think we're all suffering these things now that we are at the mercy of Zuku. Okay. So I think I left off when we were at working capital. So let me just share my screen so that we'll be able to just see that. Right. So looking at working capital, I think we had already defined what this is. And so what we are looking at here is the ways in which you can make sure we have as little working capital as possible to try and stop, keeping money in stock that we are having a difficult time converting. So some of the strategies we recommend that you use if you're in the kind of business where you keep stock. If, for example, it's somebody else who is selling on your behalf, if it's a distribution partner, just try and be more aggressive at this time to make sure people are selling. For example, if, I sell, if I make natural hair care products and I sell them through salons or, whatever line, I just try and make sure I follow up with those people. Oh, how come my stock is not moving? What do you think we can do differently, so that you can try and make sure that your distribution partner is performing? If the situation you're in is where you have stock and you're not able to move it at all, something else you can do is also consider discounts and sales. It's better to make a little bit less of profit margin and get the money that you need to keep your business going than to have a situation where you're holding so much stock but you can't move it. I don't know if any of you have been seeing the offers that Uber is doing. They're really employing this because they're trying to encourage people to keep on ordering, because their business model depends on you ordering. So they're partnering with the restaurants. They have, like, now for about 2 weeks, they've been having free deliveries between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. So what does that mean? It means that if I order from any part of this Nairobi that are among their partners, I can have food delivered to my house without having to pay any money. So that's a discount to attract people to continue using the platform. Because think about it, their business model has been affected. People are traveling less because they're being encouraged to stay at home, and people are buying in bulk, so they kind of have their own food at home. So it's really disrupting both the Uber Transport and Uber Eats business. So they have to have this kind of sales going on. It can also be, if you have goods that you're selling, or even services, you can bundle up the goods and services to be able to make more sales. So what do I mean by this? For example, I was in the supermarket on Saturday, last week on Saturday, and I saw that the rice are having a sale. So they have they're selling their rice and then they're giving free spaghetti. I suspect the spaghetti is a slow moving good. So the idea is, instead of how can we keep having sales? So maybe if it's the same price as another brand of rice, I'll pick this one because there's a free spaghetti to it. So don't be afraid to give away products or to have things like buy one, get one free, or to give discounts in this time, because think about it. Your goal at this point in time, you're not really thinking about, I want to grow and expand to the next market. Right now, you're thinking, I want to survive beyond COVID so that my business continues to exist. So you're making decisions on that level. And so if it means you need to make a sale, then make a sale, a discounted price for your goods or services, do it. So if you're in the service business, for example, if you're in bookkeeping, you can always tell your clients, I'll keep your books plus do your tax returns for free, because it's almost June where we have to do our tax returns and things like that. So I can say, I will give you that service for free, or I'll give you a combined package that's more value. So you're thinking about, how can I give value to people? Because as you're feeling the impact of coronavirus, so are other people feeling the impact. So you want to keep that in mind. Other things you can do is try and make sure you stock as little as possible of your of the goods that you have. And then if you're keeping it in a certain place, for example, if you're dealing with, for example, someone who runs a hardware, maybe you're paying for space to keep your products and services, to keep your inventory. Yeah, you may be able to reduce that space so that you can pay less, because you pay per square foot, isn't it? Or you can also move to a cheaper place. I know, of organizations that had warehouses in Nairobi, in town center, but they realized it's too expensive, so they moved to Rural because it's cheaper. So you want to think about such decisions. So as we have been doing with the others, what I want us to do right now is a reflection exercise, and think about all the possible inventory that you have, yeah? And think about, how are you going to move this inventory? So so that it doesn't become dead stock. Yeah, what are the inventory sources you have? Is it books? Is it flour? What kind of inventory do you have right now in stock? And secondly, how are you going to move this stock? So there are various things you can do. You can bundle up offers. You can have bug offs, which are buy one get one free. You can have limited time offers. So I'm just going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to think about how you can apply this in your business.
Christina
All right, I think we have finished this. And so now let's move on to the next thing. So all that we've been doing all this time, we've been talking about working capital. So that's just one of the areas you can use to manage your cash flows. That's one of the areas to consider. The next thing we're going to look at is now operations. Looking at operations, right? What does this actually mean? When we're talking about operations, we are referring to the day-to-day activities carried out in your business to keep afloat. In other words, what are all the things that you're doing day-to-day to be able to make sure that your business operates? And so at this point in time, it's not business as usual. So you're trying to find out, how can I make my operations leaner? How can I make my operations more efficient? Because this is everything that goes on in your business, yeah? Like I said, if you're in the business of printing, you purchase paper, you print it, you bind, you laminate, all those kind of things are your day-to-day operations. And so when you're thinking about what strategies do I employ to preserve cash from an operational perspective, and one of the things you want to think about is downsizing. What is your office too big? Not too long ago, I was talking to an entrepreneur who said they have to let go of their rental space because they're spending too much money, and yet the money they're getting is just being consumed by that. So as much as sometimes it's because, you know, we are human beings, we care what people think about us. And so maybe you may think, if I do this, what do people think of me? But if you don't do it, there will be no business for people to think about. So you want to be in a situation where you're considering, if I'm not able to pay this office rent, can I downsize? Can I, for example, take a smaller office? Can I take a shared office space? Or can I simply work from home if that's possible? The other thing you want to do is to negotiate. And here we are talking about a very critical role in your organization is your employees. This probably, without your employees, you wouldn't have your business as such running the way it is. And at the same time, they tend to be the highest expense factor in your, if you look at the list of your expenses, employees tend to be like, take one of the hugest chunks of expenses. Now, one of the things you can do is, depending on the kind of people that you have, right? You can think about, can you negotiate terms like, okay, I'm not able to pay you the way I was paying you now before because of 1, 2, 3. And like I said before, because everyone has been impacted by Corona, it won't be seen as malice or evil. Yeah, it's something that needs to be done to get the business going. So you want to think about, can I, you know, at the worst case scenario, what you need to do is to fire people. Yeah, but you don't want to get to that level. I'd request if we can mute ourselves so that we don't disrupt the workshop, the webinar. So the second thing that you need to do is negotiating. And so again, this is what I was telling you with regards to our employees. Just a minute, I need to mute the person who is not muting themselves. Okay. All right. I hope that's better. I've just muted all. Yeah. So again, I keep insisting on this so that it will go smoothly. Just mute yourself. Yeah. Because of the distractions in the background. So the other thing I was talking about is, again, with regards to your employees. So if you're going to tell your employees, I'm not going to be able to pay you on 1st, but I'm going to pay you on 15th, you need to be able to be sure that you can actually keep your word. Because if 15th comes and you're not able to pay them, they would feel resentful of you. So be careful when you're negotiating. You're negotiating things that you're able to do. So the other thing that you want to do in this situation is also see, at the very worst case scenario, you may have to let go of some people. And the way, last week we had a webinar where we had a successful entrepreneur who survived from America, who survived the 2008 recession. And one of the things that he mentioned was sometimes you have to let go of people so that you can pay the people who are remaining and keep the business afloat. So don't be too scared to fire people if that's what is required. It may be different things. You may employ some as consultants in that you pay them for per job basis. It can be part-time, but you try and reduce your payroll expense as much as possible, because you're not making money yet. All this money needs to keep going out. The last thing is you want to reevaluate your inputs. So understand what are the different inputs into your business and seek other alternatives. If I can give an example of Sinapis. So one of the things that we do, that because we're in training, we give people training manuals, and that's comes with every class. It's a standard that when you come for training, we give you books. And so that's usually one of our biggest expenses. And just very recently, we evaluated, we're spending too much on this. And so we started thinking about, can I get another supplier who can be able to do this for me? And so now we found a supplier who is about 40% cheaper than the person you were using before. And that also saves money for us and by God's grace, it's also the same quality, if not higher. So those are some of the decisions you need to make, because you need to keep your business afloat. And so you have to be more clever in how you're spending your money. Like what we've been doing with the other situations, I want to have a reflective session, and I want you to write down all the major expenses of your business. There are those expenses that even if you cut down, they won't do much for you, although every penny counts. But there are some that you really have to manage well if your business is going to survive the corona season. So write down all the major expenses that you have in your business, and then the ones where you think you can cut on costs. So just list them down and then underline the ones where you think, I think here I can cut some money, here I can save some money. So let's do that. If you have some time after doing that, just think about, how am I going to cut down areas? Am I going to source for cheaper suppliers? Am I going to move to a co-working space or work from home? Am I going to restructure my employees' contracts? Now think about these things and take some time to write that down. All right. I think we've made some progress. Don't worry, where you have not made progress, you can just follow up on that. But at least now you're thinking along the lines of what you can change with regards to your operations to save some money to keep you afloat. The third thing I want to talk about is debt. Depending on where your business is, you may have some debt. It doesn't have to be commercial debt, that is money that you borrowed from a bank. It could also be money that you borrowed from friends, from families, or from your family, or other different sources. And so while you may owe a lot of money to creditors, employees, the banks, and other types of people, but one of the ways you want to be able to manage is to control your debt payments. Again, another line expense that tends to be very high is paying back your principal amounts and your interest in the case of commercial capital. And so what you don't want to do, as I've said earlier, you don't want to find a situation where people have come and they've seized your assets because you've not paid your debts. That's very embarrassing. And again, it will cripple the business if those assets were necessary for the business to go on. So just like what we said you do with your suppliers is the same way you do with your debt. Be proactive, contact everyone you owe money. Yeah, this is not the time to go silent. Yeah, don't let people wonder, and what happened to Sylvia? Yeah, explain your situation just as we explain with your suppliers, you explain to your bankers as well. They're also people and they understand. Negotiate lower debt payments. Like I was sharing earlier, I mean, this is something that you had, a couple of days ago, Patrick Njoroge of CBK, who was talking about what measures are they putting to make sure that, debt doesn't cripple you as a person, and I think ultimately as a business in this season. So they are extending, if you have, I think this is for personal loans. I'm not sure if it extends to business loans, but if you have a personal loan, there's a debt relief period of 1 year. So that's a way you need to find this out if they apply for you and the loan facility that you took. That means for 1 year you have some relief. You don't have to focus on paying that debt back. There's also other opportunities. Look at which banks are proactive in helping people to borrow money at lower interest rates, and go back to your bank and now renegotiate your loan structure. At least I know for KCB, how they're working is that, usually when you go back to the bank and ask them to restructure your loan, you have to pay for the legal costs that are involved with that. But for now, at least I know with KCB, I don't know how true this is for other banks. They're going to absorb that legal cost. It's not going to come at an extra cost to you to go to your bank and say, I need to restructure my loan because I'm just not able to pay at this point in time. And then again, like we shared, even the same way with your suppliers, address the most critical people first. Then the ones which can wait, you delay that. So it's like keeping these balls in the air and making sure none of them drop, but taking care of the bigger balls, the glass balls versus the rubber balls. Again, the other aspect of debt, when you talk about debt, it's not just prioritizing, but even borrowing. It may reach a point where you're like, looking, I've collected all the money I can from the people who owe me money. I've negotiated with my suppliers to give me time and to restructure how I pay. And after I've downscaled my operations, and if after implementing all these measures, you're still not able to keep your business afloat, then that's now when we come to borrowing. Now, I'd like to be careful here. Borrowing should not be your first resort. I don't have money to pay my employees. I go to the bank, I borrow. Because what will happen is you'll do that the next month and the next month and the next month until you're over leveraged, meaning you're too indebted until, to a point where you can be declared bankrupt, right? So you want to make sure that you apply wisdom in implementing these strategies that we are sharing with you today. So try and collect, try and negotiate with your suppliers, try and get rid of slow moving stock, or bundle up your services so that people will buy them because they're saying it's more value. And then when worst comes to the worst, now you go like, all right, I don't have an option, now I just have to borrow. Now that's now where borrowing comes in. It shouldn't be your first resort. And like we say, borrow with the least likely, the least risky to the most risky. In other words, the one which has the least repercussions should you fail to pay, to the one that has the most repercussions. So think about even friends and family, right? Just because they're friends and family doesn't mean it's a grant. You should also have be careful that you pay them back, because with friends and family, if you've ever done this, if you don't pay them back, now it destroys the relationship, which probably would have been of more value to you than the money that you borrowed. The other things are all these mobile apps. Yeah, there are small amounts of money. Probably if you need small amounts of money, probably that's another option for you. Then commercial capital, when it comes to banks, it's harder to borrow from them unless you have a history of responsible borrowing from them. And I think I always recommend people to save with SACCOs, because they give you good amounts, good interest rates as well. Chamas, this is the time to figure out what are the options you have for borrowing. But again, just because we are living in a time of Corona doesn't mean that you don't have to be responsible. The government may have decided for now that CRB is disbanded. They're not really going to be, there's going to be no repercussion, but it's only for a period of time. After that period of time, your consequences will catch up with you. So you have to be a responsible borrower, even if you're being given a bit of relief at this point in time. So what I want us to do again, also to reflect, if it's reached the point we need to, to borrow money to stay afloat, to survive, then I want you to write down all the sources you can tap into to get funding. Don't just say family, friends, bank. Think about which family member is that who I can borrow from. If it's a friend, which friend is that I can borrow from? If it's a bank, which bank is giving me the best, is it my current bank? Is it my chama? Is it my SACCO? Think about what are the areas where, on a scale, like starting with the one where it has the least consequences, in other words, they won't require collateral or things like that, to the one which, like, okay, this one is serious. So like, just write down all the sources that you have that you can get funding, and then categorize them from the most easiest to access to the most difficult to access, and then have a plan of how you approach them. We all know the saying that says, failing to plan is planning to fail. So just plan for this. If I reach the stage where for my business to survive, I need debt, how am I going to go about getting that debt? So let's take a few minutes to write this down. All right, I think we can move on. Don't worry if you've not finished. At least you've started thinking about the process, and you can continue with that thought flow. Now, the last resort we're going to talk about today, and now this is liquidation. You may already be familiar with what this is, but in case you're not, so when you're talking about liquidation, what we're talking about here is selling some or all of your assets in order to make sure that your business stays afloat. Sometimes this may seem scary, but it's better to sell on your terms than when you're forced to. When people are coming to take your things for auction, and then you don't have a say there. They may be of more value than whatever is being auctioned, but you won't have a say there. I know of at least 2 entrepreneurs who had to sell like their personal, who are, at least they were thinking of selling their personal vehicles to be able to raise money to keep the business afloat. So that's, when I had that, I was like, that's real commitment to your business. And you have to think, which one is more valuable to me at this point in time? If I see that my business has potential, it just needs like a breathing room to be able to survive this period and it will be successful, it may be worth the sacrifice. And so you want to think about, okay, this is my business, this is what I own. what can I get rid of, what can I keep? So then you sell at, you know, a good price, as opposed to, you know, like I said, where people are coming to auction your things and you have no say about the value that they fetch. So when if you reach the stage where you feel it's necessary to liquidate your business so as to be able to keep your business afloat, then start with assets that you don't need. Yeah, you dispose of the ones which have the least value to you, but at the same time that can generate enough cash to survive. Things like, you know, if I sell, if I sell a table, that may not give me as much money as if I sell a vehicle. Maybe I've been in the delivery business and I have 2 delivery vehicles. Maybe I'm getting less sales now. It may make sense for me to sell one and keep one if that's what it takes to keep the business afloat, because even right now business is limited. So think about what are the things I can sell that will be able to give me the money I need to be able to survive this time. Again, this is a very last resort if you've implemented all the other things we've been discussing today, and even after doing that, you still don't have enough money. So again, as we've been doing before, and I think these reflection exercises are important because I want you to come out with something tangible that will help you in your business. So I want you to think about and list down, you probably already know this offhand, all the assets that you own in your business. And now, having written all this down, underline the ones that you think, I think I can do away with this and still keep and still have my business running, right? If you have, for example, a restaurant, that could be, you know, there's so many things, equipments in a restaurant that you can sell. Just think about what are the things that I really, really need that my business that I cannot do without for my business to go on, and what are the things I probably don't need as of now. Yeah. And then if you have time or for later, come up with a plan of how, where, and when you will dispose of these assets if your situation calls for this. So let me give you a few minutes to think about that. All right. I hope that we've taken down some notes. And before we come to the Q&A session, if we have questions at this point, there are some things I want us to remember. You know, sometimes we say desperate times call for desperate measures, but I tend to disagree with that saying in the sense of don't compromise your integrity, right? It's better for your business to, you know, to have a good reputation. It's better for your business to go under than for you to have to start paying people to get business. You don't have to bribe to get your money back from people. You don't have to bribe to get business. So what you'll see with corruption is that it's a very hard cycle to come out of. Once you enter it, it's a vicious cycle. You have to keep doing it and doing it to get business, which is neither profitable nor ethical. And again, like I say, better to have your integrity, because if you have your integrity and you have a good reputation, people will still come to you when they need good service. When they know, okay, I know whenever I come to Sylvia, she won't give me money, but she's very good at what she does. People, you have preserved your reputation, you have preserved your integrity. And by doing that, people will continue to come to you long after the coronavirus is over. Again, don't compromise relationships or financial future. It may be tempted to say, well, this is the time to do all this sports pesa business. It's the time to get into lotto, you know, gambling so that you can make some money, or stealing, or, you know, doing funny business deals, fraudulent business deals. This is not the time to do that, because again, like we say, it will catch up with you with time, and it will have ruined your whole business if the next time we're seeing you at the front of the newspapers because of, you know, doing one thing or another that was dodging. And again, be as upfront as possible as you can. Yeah. Try and think things out. In other words, plan for the future. Maybe now you're thinking, I have one of the things right now you need to figure out as a person in business is how, you know, what's your burn rate, what's your cash rate? In other words, how much money do you have in, you know, within your ability, how much money do you have in your reserves to preserve you for how long? So maybe you say, I have enough to survive for 3 months. Don't think Corona will finish in 3 months, so this is not my problem. You need to think, okay, what if Corona lasts for more than 4 months? How am I going to survive? So now try and plan out as much as possible. Start collecting the debt that is out there. Start, you know, even we're going to talk about this in another workshop next week. Start thinking about how you can innovate your business. Start thinking about things you can be able to do to preserve your cash, and, you know, to borrow where necessary, and to be able to release as much money as possible into your business to make sure you survive, even if you think you're good for the next 3 months. So at this point, if there's anyone with questions, I'll be able to take them for a couple of minutes before we wind up.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. I have 3 questions so far. Yeah, so I'll do the first one. So the first question, or 2 questions, they deal with negotiation. So how do you negotiate with people like landlords and KRA now? That's the first question. How do you negotiate with people like KRA and landlords now?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that question. So we are talking about negotiation. So I'm not sure if you're talking. So landlord, it could be either way. It could be your home landlord, residential, or it could be where your business is located. So one of the things I've seen is possible is, you know, we are more scared to do it than we've approached it. And so one of the things I would say to you is, like I've started, first and foremost, don't go silent. Call your landlord and say, I want to, I need to have a conversation with you. I almost said have a meeting, then I realized this is not a meeting time. Yeah, but you can call them and say, okay, this is the situation I find myself in. How you'd approach it is what I would recommend is just lay your cards on the table and say, it's especially useful if you've been even a faithful payer of your rent. If you know it's due on 5th and you've been paying by 5th, if you pay your rent quarterly or whatever, if you've been faithfully doing that, then it makes your landlord more, you know, have more grace towards you. So one of the things I'd say is first lay your cards on the table and say, okay, this is the business I was in. I was in an events business. I'm in an events business, and this is what has happened. Now, I have every intention of paying my rent, but my challenge is I'm not able to pay it. Could you accept, for instance, if, for example, you pay your rent on a quarterly basis, could you accept that I pay you on a monthly basis instead, because I'm not able to get such huge upfront sums at once? If that is not, you know, if that's not your case and you pay on a monthly basis, you can tell them, can you give me time to restructure? If, for example, just let me pick a random figure, if my rent is 40,000, can I pay that on a weekly basis or on a bi-weekly basis? Or can you give me a grace period of 1 month to figure out how I'm going to pay this rent? And if I'm not able, and then what you have to do is preempt the worries. The worries that your landlord has is, you'll not pay me, and then you'll become, you know, a sumbua, always trying to collect money from you. So give them a way out, like, okay, this is, give me 1 month grace period to pay my rent. And then next month I'll be able to pay this and this. And if I'm not, then I'm willing to lose the space so that you can, so, you know, I'll find a way. Just show them that you're committed and you have a plan. So if someone sees that you have a plan, if you say, I'm going to pay smaller installments, instead of paying that 40K at once, which I can't do right now, I'll pay you 777 until that amount is done. Your landlord will be likely to hear. You know, I personally know a landlord, and they're usually like open, especially when they see, you know, that this is a person who does not, is not their normal character to default on the rent. It's someone who pays, but they found themselves in a situation. People will understand, especially, like I said, it's it's a season where everyone is going through the same challenge. With regards to, so what I'd say is just approach the person, the landlord. If it's an agent, I don't know if you're working with an agent, if you're working with a landlord, it's better when you're working with the landlord directly. Just approach them and tell them how the situation is. And then give them options. Option 1, I pay 7,700 until I finish. Option 2, give me a grace period of 1 month, then I do this. Give them options so that the question is not really, do I allow this or not? But the question becomes, which of these options do I give my tenant? Now, when it comes to KRA, I know there are some measures that I've been seeing some KRA updates. I'm trying to recall them now, but I know there are some things. There are some things that the government has given leeway over. I may not be too sure, but I think there's a period of relief where you can pay some of these taxes. The thing with KRA, just, if you can write and record, have written evidence that you've been requesting for help, because one of the things is with KRA, because how iTax works, if you don't pay, they record that you didn't pay your, for example, pay as you earn by the 9th of the month, and automatically you'll be slapped with a fine. So you just wake up one day and see you have a fine on the system of 70,000 or whatever amount of money it is. So one of the things you need to do at this point is reach out in a formal way that can be traced back and say, okay, I'm not able to pay this at this point. What help can you give me, and negotiate with it? I think right now, at least because of what the president had announced a few weeks back, there's a lot of leniency in that regard. But make sure you have like an evidence trail of how you're requesting for help, so that it's not like you're talking to someone who didn't even document anything. Try and have documented support. The other thing is, because I can't really recall at this point in time, just try and find out, like I was sharing about CBK and what they're doing, KCB and what they're doing. Try and find out what is KRA doing at this point in time to support businesses. Try and find out if there's such a measure. But what I would say is, with regards to all your debts, I would say, KRA needs to be somewhere at the top. Remember where we talked about prioritizing debt? Unfortunately, they tend to be the least understanding, which is unfortunate. Try and say, okay, I know this person cannot budge, so this is the one that if any pennies I have, I want to put them here. At least I know my landlord can understand me. At least I know my employees can understand me. So try and prioritize in terms of who is the person that, this person, if I don't pay this, it will have the heaviest consequences on me. So those are some of the suggestions I'd have for negotiation.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, the second question is more to do with finances and investment. So it is, the question goes like, how do you go about the financial forecast in this time when business is low and handle getting investors? How do you go about financial forecasts in this time when business is low and handle investors?
Okay. All right. So to answer that question, because I've been on a number of calls talking about this of late, right now, an investor is also intelligent. They know right now if they're going to invest in your business, you're going to put that money into surviving. So you're going to put it into working capital. So you need to think about, before this corona happened, what you were thinking about was, how can I get money to grow my business in whichever form, whatever growth looks like in your business. But right now, what you're talking about here is, how can I get money to survive in this period of time? So what you're looking for is, if I can say, favorable kind of investment. And what I mean is, it's very difficult in a season like this, when even investors are losing money in the businesses they've put in, to be able to give money into an investment. However, the organizations that are coming up that are looking to see how they can support small and growing businesses, SMEs, in this time of corona. So what I'd say is, change your focus from looking for an investor to people or organizations that are trying to give money, to working capital money, or kind of for some financial support and grants to SMEs. I know Facebook announced that there's, I think they call it Facebook Boost. They announced that they're giving some money and support for entrepreneurs. Maybe you can try and look that up. I don't remember exactly. The call hadn't opened by the time I was seeing that opportunity. So that you're looking for who are the organizations, because think about it. Corona has been declared a pandemic. So even, because we work with donors, we're seeing donors shifting from, giving money for, say, this cause or another to giving money to things that are directly related to Corona. So you want to see, because one of the things, the big impacts, obviously health is one of the biggest, but the next thing is how are we going to cushion the businesses that have been affected by this? So there's funding out there. It could be in the form of soft loans, it could be in the form of interest-free loans, it could be in the form of grant. So what I'd say is, as you're looking for money, I won't even call it an investor, look for people who are looking to support businesses at this particular point in time, who are looking to support businesses in this Corona time. So please look up Facebook Boost. I know they were supporting, I don't know what the criteria was, but they were definitely supporting entrepreneurs in that time. So those are the things that, you know, as you sit at home, as you think about what to do, those are the things you should be researching on, so that you can find, and not just, it doesn't have to be, you know, multinational organizations, even the banks themselves, even local organizations themselves, what are they doing to support entrepreneurs financially, those who can. Yeah.
Thank you, Sylvia. So the last question is for small businesses, and the question goes like, how do you manage costs between yourself and the client, cost share between yourself and the client, and still make profit? How do you manage cost share between yourself and the client and still make money? I think this comes from what you said. We can find how to give gift discounts at this time. So the question is just for small businesses.
All right. So how do you manage? So so you're asking, like, how do you manage to cost share between self and clients? I hope I've understood that question correctly, but I think you're saying, how do you pass off your costs to your client, right? So I think one of the things I've been seeing people do is, okay, now there's more deliveries. Maybe in the past, one way of easily passing off costs to your clients is charging them for deliveries as opposed to absorbing it yourself. So for instance, if that's what you meant by this question, if for instance, like I know someone, there's someone, one of our entrepreneurs who makes face masks, and I bought some. While maybe in a normal situation should have delivered them to me for free, she charged me for the safe border that delivered them to me. So what I mean is, like, that's one way in which you can, your clients see value in what you're doing, but you're kind of passing off some costs which you yourself cannot afford to do. So if you need to think about, I mean, it varies on the business that you're doing. So maybe if you're you know, anything to do with, like, it could be deliveries, or it could be anything where you see that the client has seen value in your business or what you're offering, try and pass off some of those costs to them. Like the way I've said, if it's like the delivery cost, for instance. If you're talking about how do you bundle up things, to like what Joe said about discounts, again, this varies, you know, depending on the kind of business that you're in. For example, if you are selling cereals, I don't know what business the person who asked that question is in, but if you're, for example, selling cereals, so you're talking about beans and maize and you know, dengu and things like that, you may be able to have an offer. Like, what I mean right now is, so if you are maybe selling your 1 kilo of beans at 150, and then you're also selling dengu at 200 shillings, you know, so now you bundle them and say, if you buy dengu and if you buy you know, beans, maybe together you'd have spent 300 or 350, but now if you buy them together, you're going to buy at 280. That's what I mean by bundling things, so that you can be able to get, you know, get stock moving, get people to buy more of your things. And again, there's some industries obviously that are benefiting from this Corona time, but there are also quite a number that are losing out. And so if you're losing out, you need to consider probably, you know, lowering your costs or giving more value to the customer for the same price, so that, you know, you can continue getting business even in this season. So I hope I've answered your question.
Hopefully. Yeah, so we have one last one that has just come in. I think this is to do with the question goes like, what is the best thing to do right now if one is laid off work? They're improving their skills, and also like banks, they cannot approach an investor directly for investment. So I think that, if I understand that question clearly,
I don't know if those were two questions, but I think I had, if you're been laid off and you're like, okay, yeah, I find myself in this situation, I don't have work, what's the best thing for me to do, right? So right now you're seeing a situation where people are being laid off, obviously because businesses are not making money. But like I said earlier, there are businesses which are making money. So there are people who are the people who are making money at this point. Forget those people who are selling surgical masks at extraordinary prices. I mean, sustainable businesses, like people who are providing home internet solutions. Those people are making money. Why? Because more and more people need internet to be able to work from home. They need internet to have something to do at home. So if you've been laid off and your vision is to go back to employment, that's a very good idea. What you're doing in terms of going, upgrading your skills, doing online classes, at least that gives you something to do, and it's also productive. The other thing I'd say is look at this transferable skills that you have. And when I talk about transferable skills, I mean, like, maybe in my previous job I was working in I don't know, I was working in a bakery as a salesperson, and now I've been laid off because people are not, or I was in events, yeah, and now I'm being laid off because people are not working. What in that capacity of my role can be transferred to another industry that's succeeding at this time? So think about the people who are likely to be hiring in this season are people whose businesses are booming in this season. I just gave one example, like internet providers. Another group that would be probably thriving is digital agencies, anyone who deals with converting information into online, as people try and convert courses into online. So you have to think, what are the industries that are benefiting from this situation? And if they're benefiting, it means their capacity is growing. Like, if you think about the platform you're using, the demand for Zoom has really grown. And if I'm not mistaken, as much as they're probably based in US and not here, they're probably hiring right now because they cannot keep up with the demand that they have. So think about how, of these industries, where are the skills that I have applicable, and then try and look for work with those industries. That's something you can do. For the other question was, are banks the best place to buy stocks from? So I guess you mean shares. That's who asked that question. Let me see. So you want to buy, so you're thinking this is a good time to buy shares because it's the market is a bit bearish, so the prices will be lower. So if you're asking in terms of if banks are the best place for you to buy shares because you're seeing this is a good time to invest in shares because they've gone down and they'll inevitably go up, I would not be too sure if banks are the best place to do it. I would think, this, what do you call these people? Like the guys who sell shares, not necessarily the banks. I'm not too sure how to answer that question, so I think I'll leave it for now. Because I don't know if you're thinking in terms of those who will charge me the least to buy the shares, or if you're looking for advisory support on which shares to buy. So I'm not too sure about that question for now.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. I think one last question that you have already, I think, touched on is, as an event professional, should I divest right now to survive and get working capital, or should I just keep on pressing on, which you touched a bit, but you can elaborate.
All right. So events as a business on their own are very, it's a profitable business because events must happen. However, at this point in time, events are not happening. So I think to your question, you need to come up with a plan to survive. People are not meeting in groups at this point in time. And so it will be very hard if you're in events business, photography business, equipment rental for event business to survive. What I'd recommend is at this point in time, if you can come up with like I can say a short-term business that can help you, survive in this period of time, I'd recommend you do that. Now, again, going back to the transferability of skills, what are the things you can do at this point in time, that you'll be able to give you money, and taking that as this is like my side hustle to survive as I wait Corona out. But I would not recommend you sit and do nothing because we don't know, number one, we don't know how long this will last. And it's in times like this, as we continue to experience these situations, we continue to innovate, and who knows, you may find something that it will give you even more money than what your events business was doing. For instance, you may go into like developing an online training platform for people who are interested in events. For instance, you can be able to do different things that you are not doing that can give you a revenue stream. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who talked about a situation in Nicaragua. This is way before Corona. So Nicaragua has been having a lot of what do you call this? These political oppression and disruptions. And so there was somebody who had a really successful business, but they realized this is not working. So they decided to go into foods, because at least, at the very least, in a very suppressed state, people need to eat. And so, she went on baking, and is it baking or cooking meals, quick meals, because people were not even allowed to leave home, so people who are not used to cooking like that. So she found a business that was able to sustain her main business. So I would encourage you to think about that. There's an article that I wrote on the Sinapis blog about 3 businesses that survived major crises. One survived the Great Depression of the 1920s. Another survived the economic recession. Another one survived, a like national health disaster as a food chain. And so if you can go to like sinapis.org/blog, you can just read that article, and you point out what are the key lessons that you can learn from these businesses that survived periods where, revenues went down by as much as 95%, and at the same time still made it up. So you may have to change your business model. You may have to get into something different for now to be able to survive. But keeping in mind that in the long term, when things normalize, you'd go back to your business. Yep.
Thank you, Sylvia. We don't have any more questions, but for the article, I've shared a link on our chat.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Then I think in closing, I'll just give a bit of information about Sinapis then. So one of you was saying, what can you do this time? Someone had mentioned about being laid off, who is improving herself with skills. We encourage you to do the same thing. So I think I saw WhatsApp forward going around about, how you should be using this time to either gain a skill or do something, but use the time productively. If your business time, and this is the advice I give entrepreneurs, and we even give them in the course, when business is low, it doesn't mean now you just idle around and wait for business to pick up. Think about, as I like this phrase, working on your business as opposed to working in your business. When you're in your business, you're in the thick of things, sorting out operations, fighting fires here. But now it's time to step back and have a strategic view of your business and think about, all right, how is my business going? What different direction can I take in it? So take some time to pause, to reflect, and think about how you can holistically grow your business. I personally recommend doing courses. Sinapis is one such course. We have like I outlined at the beginning of this course, the Sinapis Entrepreneur Academy course. We are going to learn things. We've been talking about finance. Some of these things I've shared are already in the curriculum, because we know that at any point in your business, cash crunches come and you need to deal with them. So you don't have to wait for another corona to be able to know what to do. And that's what finance covers. Things like, how do you manage your working capital? How do you raise money? How do you pitch to investors? How do you even manage to balance your books? Sales and marketing, another big area for anybody in business, because if you're not making sales, definitely you won't have a business. So how do you then keep on maximizing your sales and increasing the value of your clients? Then you have HR management. As your business grows, you're going to have to deal with human beings who you learn are not the easiest resource to manage if you have not already in that phase. And so how do you then manage them well? You may not be able to pay them as well as big blue chip companies, but how do you still attract the best talent, retain them, grow them, and help them to such that you reach a point in your business where even if you're not in your business for 1 month, things will still run. Kingdom business, what we talked about, running businesses that glorify God, that follow his principles of doing business, and operations, some of which I touched on, things to do with hiring, things to do with how do you make sure that your operational process is as lean as possible, is as fast as possible, and produces the best quality. And another reason I think at this point in time, it would be good to join a course. We've been talking with our alumni in different contexts, in our webinars, one-to-ones on phones. And one of the things that you've seen is people think they're alone. And the thing is, you're not alone. Maybe when you're in your house and you're thinking, look at how my business is doing, you even want to hide. When you get out there and meet other entrepreneurs, you'll realize you're not alone. You're having the same challenges that other people are having. So one other benefit I would say of joining this course is that you'll be able to meet people in the same journey with you. You can encourage one another. Maybe your spouse would not be able to understand because they're not in the business, but we are working with people who already understand, who have been through or are going through the same challenges that you're going through. Furthermore, with Sinapis, we also give our entrepreneurs a chance to win 1 million in grant funding. We do have a business plan competition where people submit their entries, and then we select somebody who wins 1 million clean, and this usually happens in December. And like I said before, we'll, again, not being alone, we have a lifelong alumni network. As Sinapis, we invest so much in our alumni, giving them information, giving them talks, mentoring and coaching in the pipeline, even trying to access them, connect them with capital providers to take their businesses forward. So once you finish the course in Sinapis, you join this alumni network that sticks with you for life. So it's like friends for life. And so what I'd encourage you at this time is just to think about, rather than sitting at home, how can I use my time wisely? And one of the things we have coming up is an online class. So this is scheduled to start on 21st of April, which is in a few weeks' time. It's going to be a Tuesday class from 9 to 11. So our classes have typically been physical classes, but we also had to, change our way of doing things with the current situation. So we are using a combination of Zoom, like what we have here, for interactive 2-hour calls every week. And then we also have an online platform called Talent LMS, where they're interactive. These are places for you to have group chats with your, discussions. You can have, you can see some of the videos we have. You can go through the content. And so that's also available to you. We've been traditionally charging our program at 40,000, but we've discounted it by 25%, and also made it available in lower installments of 7,500 per month, just because we know that this is not a season where people are, it's not business as usual. So we also want to be sensitive to that. So what I'd want to encourage you, if you want to use this time where it's a bit of a downtime to, increase yourself, invest in yourself as an entrepreneur, and think about different ways you can make your business successful once this is over, I'd encourage you to join the course. The link is right there, the bit.ly/Sinapis Kenya. So I'd encourage you to be able to join this class, make some friends, make some connections, will help you in business. And at the same time, also keep yourself alert, keep yourself growing, and also keep yourself hopeful. Instead of just watching news that is, so discouraging, you can keep yourself hopeful by seeing the little steps you can make every day to make your business move forward even in this time. So unless anyone has any other question at this juncture, I just want to say thank you all for attending. I'm sorry I had to mute all of you. I'd prefer it if this was interactive, but because of the way our connections are different, we are sharing houses with other people and pets, it would be, we'd have to mute it, but my contacts are there. If you want to have a phone conversation, another, an online meeting, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions as well. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming, and and I hope that we'll be able to see you soon in our classes or in other forums. Thank you. Okay.